All right, crew, we're gonna jump back in here. So, there's clearly no shortage of smarts and talent and work ethic in this room, and that was some amazing stuff. So I just want to kind of take a minute. I don't know how you guys feel, but I kind of thought that this would be a good point to talk about this. I just feel like there's so much to do, and it's like, how can we possibly do all of this that we're talking about? So I want to kind of talk through a few things. Like, number one, the Wendy's example, I think, is an amazing example of taking a step back from a campaign and really doing more of a brand. And so I think the more foundation you can lay of your brand content, it's only going to help campaigns when you do run them. So when you do basically start asking your audience to buy things, you've been sort of telling your story and providing some other value for them along the way, and I think they're more likely to feel the need to support you or share your information when you really need help from your audience. But it's hard to be, like, how are you funny and how are you engaging, right? Because those are very subjective terms, and it's a lot of pressure to create content to be funny or engaging or entertaining or things like that. So my head is about to pop off. How can I possibly do all of this? And now I'm going to try to talk tactically and strategically at the same time about how to make this be part of your routine. Like, to me, it needs to be like brushing your teeth and, you know, all the other things that you would do from a hygiene standpoint, or if you're into fitness and if you've saved money or you've lost weight or you've set those types of goals for yourself in the past, this is kind of what this kind of content generation needs to be like for you, because it's a little bit intimidating and kind of like a thorn in your side when you think about it. So, to me, there's a few ways to approach this. Number one, you're the subject matter expert of what you're doing, and I think sometimes that gets lost on everybody. You're interesting. Your story and your journey is interesting to your audience. You don't think it is, but it is. So the point that Emily made about, like, Instagram stories and that kind of being more like messy behind the scenes type documentation stuff, I think that that's where, if you're having trouble getting started, that's a really easy area to take a step back and say, who cares if I'm funny, who cares if I'm entertaining, or who cares if I'm engaging right now, but why don't I just talk to my audience about what it really is that I'm doing, or what we're really trying to do as a brand. And then also, you guys have tons of knowledge that you don't realize that you have about your subject matter, your product, or your message and your audience. And so to be able to just be authentic about what it is that you know, your days or weeks or months or years of experience, it doesn't matter. Even if you're just starting to do something, it can be the documenting of the fact that you're doing that can become very engaging to your audience. That's why reality TV is so popular. So I'm not saying create your own reality TV show, but like, I think that you can have a version of that just to get you started. And then as you start, you kind of gain a little bit more confidence around what your audience thinks is funny or engaging or entertaining. And once you start putting stuff out there, and that's why it really is about routine and consistency. And that stuff just by nature isn't fun, but the more that you do it, I think it really starts to make sense. So this is kind of the expectations for laying the groundwork when we talk about the foundation of your brand content versus like your campaign content. So what we're really saying by this slide is that you should be consistently blogging every week and consistently making social posts around those blogs. So we talked about, like, whatever works for you, but, you know, if it's 5 posts on the platform, that might be definitely on the high end, but we want you engaged on each platform to understand the opportunity that may or may not lie there for you. So we talked about earlier, you get a certain amount of your business from a certain amount of your efforts. But this is an opportunity to see kind of the full spectrum of where you can put those efforts. And so we do a lot of what Twice Social does. And so part of the way that we plan out is just to say, you don't need, really the point of this slide is to look at the yellow box here, because we've got the day of the week, the type of content, so this is blog posts, social media, the status, so we think of it like, from my end, like working with a client. And so the status, whether or not the client has approved it yet, and the blog post. And so it might be, you have a team, regardless of whether or not you're an agency or a brand. If you're a brand, you have teammates. You want to be communicating with similar voices and not conflicting maybe what somebody else would post about on your team. So you kind of have the approval process, and then really all it takes is like this one idea to have like all of this other content here. So this is kind of how like the research. Sorry about this, but the research, plan, and then publish. If you think about taking a couple hours out of your week to research and plan, and then the publishing part can be like brushing your teeth throughout, you're checking the box, but it becomes a little bit easier, so then it can be more fun. So I'm just going to talk real quick about like blogging, just repurposing it for different platforms. And so Medium is a platform. I know like I'm going to kind of go backwards as to probably what's most relevant for the room, but Medium is a platform where you can be seen as a subject matter expert. That's kind of like the Medium brand is basically a blog platform that has an audience like any other social media platform. In a way, it's a lot like Facebook and LinkedIn, except you don't. Your profile basically allows you to post a blog and then it's kind of like the modern day Tumblr too, but in a way, it's kind of like this higher end brand around blogging, so that you can kind of be seen as a subject matter expert in your vertical or your niche. But really, Facebook's also an awesome blogging platform, so it's kind of taking that one content idea that you came up with, and it might be how we make a particular, like what's unique about the way that we make our product, or maybe it's we had inspiration for this particular design, and we want to talk about that. We want to talk about it in a blog, and then we want to post it to different platforms. We want to create a meme or an image out of it for Instagram. So it might be you're writing that one particular blog, and then you're saying, you're taking like the most powerful pull-out quote from that blog and then turning it into just a quote that you lay over an image for Instagram. And oh, by the way, you can also post an entire blog into an Instagram post. And then like we talked earlier about testing things out to see how well they do. And you may find that you get higher engagement out of sort of a hack like that, where you're putting a ton of content into an Instagram post with a few of the hashtags versus just a short message with like 10 hashtags or something like that. So just want you guys to get as much legs and runway out of one effort, kind of extending it into everywhere else. So we talk about keywords as well. I think that's somewhat relevant, just around being able to expand into areas where potential buyers or people interested in your products might be searching for a similar type of product. They might not know you yet, but they get familiar with you through a search. And also that helps with, we talked about searching on the native platforms themselves too. So in the search in Instagram, searching in Twitter, keeping in mind what your top keywords are related to what your audience may be looking for. This is important to me, this audience crossover. And so you may have heard people talk about sort of siphoning off other audience, kind of siphoning off other people's audiences. And I think that the industry that you're all in, this can be done really naturally. So I'll use the high-end footwear as an example. So you may find that there's companies, pants companies that match really well with your footwear. And so going out and connecting with them in the micro influencer space is a perfect example with that, 3,000 to 5,000 followers, using hashtags that are in like not the millions, and reaching out to them, DMing them or finding their email and just saying, hey, we think that our footwear would look really well with your brand of clothing, and would you want to partner together on kind of like an audience crossover where you post art, we could do one photo together and maybe we both post it, or it's like we have a concept and we do a version for you and we do a version for us, and then we each cross promote each other. Also with, I think necklaces with shirts, or, you guys know this stuff way better than I do, but I think there's so many opportunities with the different types of brands and different types of products in the room where you could literally just have months of your content calendar could be filled up just with audience crossover stuff. And so you're providing value to each other, and you don't have to think about, am I funny, am I entertaining, or am I engaging? You're going to be engaging because you're going to be relevant to each other's audiences. And then you're going to get new eyeballs on your brand from those audience crossover partnerships. And a lot of it's about just being sort of fearless. Like, we talked a little bit about digital stalking, but this, in order to get there, you do kind of need to be spending time digitally stalking other brands and other users, but also researching them strategically to see what their following is like and do they match up with you, and then thinking through, am I providing value to them? And I think if you can think through, here's how I'm kind of providing value to them, and these guys made a really good point about the content could be the KPI for them too. So if you can help provide them with good content, then chances are they're going to say yes. And 10 out of every 10 might not say yes, but you're probably going to get 1 out of every 10 to say yes. And so you can easily build up your content calendar that way. Other ways to find these types of partnerships are different for different verticals. So I've got some stuff in here that I've kind of skipped through a little bit, but I think we've talked about probably the most relevant stuff for the room, but there's also social media forums. There's also web forums. There's places to go and get sort of anecdotal data like Reddit and like kind of non-traditional places, I guess, for maybe the fashion space, but still could be some good data points. We talked about Instagram hashtags a little bit and the searching on Instagram just to basically see a lot of what the Twice Social team works on. I think that's how you get to eventually doing something that's as engaging as a Wendy's type of campaign. I don't think you jump in and be that funny and on point, but I think like you can easily get there by just taking these baby steps in, getting yourself in the habit of being on the platform consistently throughout your day and throughout your week. And I'm happy to kind of like share some of these tips. Like, I will just put it on my calendar, like I don't know how you guys operate your day, but I'll put, I've got to do my data-driven daily tip for Snapchat or for Instagram, like at this time and this day, and I'll think, and I won't go out of my way to do, I don't think you guys have to go out of your way to come up with the content either. I'll just, whatever I talk to a client about the day before will be what my tip is, because that's also a data point that's relevant. Because if I find myself talking about the same thing 3 times in a week, then that's kind of an indicator to me to be like, okay, I'm going to talk about that in my content. Or even if I don't want to do kind of like, I kind of was laughing internally when Emily was talking about like the messy Instagram story, because like I'm the guy that actually then posts that as content on my feed. And so my feed is like really messy, along with some of the other stuff. But anyway, I think that you can just have an idea around what's relevant based on what you're working on, and then just make that what you're posting about. So whether that ends up being you talking about it and that is part of your story, and that could be 30 seconds. I mean, the good thing with Instagram, like platforms like Instagram and Snapchat, is it really can only be like 30 to 90 seconds. And so just take the pressure off yourself and try to make it part of your routine. I put it on my calendar. I'll do stuff in my car. I'll film. I'm in a different kind of space than you guys are in. You have, I think, naturally beautiful imagery in front of you. Then there's pressure to make it like the fashion quality. So I understand that. That's not easy. For me, it's taking things like I'm behind my computer geeking out all day, so it's like videoing what I'm doing on my computer, or like what my coworker's doing with his little setup. And so I think that you guys can think about building your own version of that, I guess, is my main point. So any questions on any of this? Really, it's that's kind of the punchline. I guess a couple other things. I'll throw this out there. I don't know if this will resonate with any of you, but some of you I've talked individually with a lot of you throughout the day, and so I live in Spring Hill and I work in East Nashville, so I have 2 hours every day in the car. So that kind of is a killer, because then I work a lot at night and early in the morning to kind of backfill that. But then I also want to be putting out my own content for my company, for our team. And so I've actually started to podcast while I'm driving. So there's this app called Anchor that, well, it's free. It is far and away my favorite app of all time. Podcast? I drive and I podcast. I record my podcast while I'm driving. I'm a little gangster like that. It's not for everybody. I did get rear-ended during an interview one time, but there was no damage. It was just like bumper-to-bumper traffic on 65. So I end my segment real fast. I'm like, okay, Dennis, well, thank you for that great talk. I'm going to have to pick this back up later. Thanks for being on the show. And then I pull over to the side. But it's been so liberating for me, because it's that pressure of how do you do it all? And so if I have a thought about, for me, it's like a thought about Google AdWords, or a thought about something, on the digital marketing side of things, but I'll have a client say, I have no idea what you're talking about. And so then that's an indicator for me, I could just talk about it for 5 minutes on Anchor while I'm driving, or while I'm maybe pulled over to the side of the road or something better, safer. But it's, I'm cranking out content at scale that way, and then when I do have maybe an hour to write a blog or make some posts off the phone and on the desktop, I'm doing it based off of, I'm just basically transcribing my podcast into a blog. So that's kind of what I'm talking about when I say one content idea down to 8 different things. But I would encourage you to maybe just try Anchor, because it's fun and it's free. It's easily my favorite app of all time. And part of it's about hitting different audiences, because different people are in different places. But then part of it's also about, you have to hit someone 5 or 6 times before they're going to make a purchase from you. And so if they hear you talking about the journey of how you've selected your leather for your footwear, for example, on a podcast, but then they see a campaign somewhere, I think that the two, play well together. So I want to try to make it, and I'm happy to talk in depth about anything, any questions that you have. But I mean, you got, from the last session, you guys obviously all get it, and I just want to try to provide as much additional value or specifics that I can. So does anyone have any questions on any of this? I know you probably think I'm crazy for podcasting while I'm driving, but it's easily one of the more. I'm pretty
drivers here. This is wormy.
I'm pretty. It's just like talking. You can legally talk. Yeah, it's on the sync, right?
We have a client that has a thermal pocket that you can put your curling iron or your flat iron into, and you can put it in. You can attach it to your car and use it to curl your hair on your. I was like, no, we're not. We were talking about a new product launch yesterday. She was really excited to reveal it to me, and I was like.
And it was for doing that while you're driving?
It was for while it was going to be I was like, let's rethink the marketing. That's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
But you're podcasting while you drive. That's amazing.
What's cool about it is it does phone interviews phenomenally well. So I used to think back when the iPhone first came out, I spent way too much time talking to my friends on the phone about fantasy football, and I would think if we could record our conversations, this would be a pretty decent radio show. It wouldn't be that bad. And so now, like, Anchor actually gives you the ability to do that. Just have a conversation with anyone, anywhere. Just interview your vendors, your business, partners, and then again, that's an example of, like, you don't have to put pressure on yourself to be entertaining or funny or whatever. You just naturally have a conversation with somebody that you like, that you do business with, put them on, and they appreciate. Like, I have 0 listeners for my podcast, and for some reason people are like, I am so pumped to be, like, do an interview with you, and I'm like, okay, that's cool. So who wants to be on my podcast?
So you don't have any listeners?
No, I do now, but like when I first started, it was, it's the 1 is better than 0 mentality. You just gotta get that one person. But I would say I have a couple hundred right now.
So how do you promote that?
So that's a good question. So what I've started doing is everywhere that I'm doing anything, I'm talking about the other things. So like on my website, I'll say, add me on Snapchat, Data Driven Dude. Follow me on Instagram, Data Driven Design. Thank you for letting me say all this naturally. On my podcast, I'll say, check out the Daily Tip. Add me on Snapchat. And then the blog will be like the transcription of the podcast. It all kind of plays into this ecosystem of wherever you're. And actually, one thing is in your email signature. Like if you guys are all free and clear on, you can put whatever you want in your email signature kind of a thing, or as long as you're on brand or whatever to a certain extent, I would put it there, because I think that's still one of the main areas where everyone in business is always checking. Like you're ignoring a lot of your emails that aren't related to your business, like that's not relevant to you, like you're getting spammed and stuff. But the emails that are important to you, everyone's checking them and reading them and seeing the signature. So anywhere where you can have one of those touch points, I would put it there and promote the other thing. So promoting the podcast is just a lot of online, like when I'm blogging and doing things online, or if I'm like I've posted on Instagram like a quote from the podcast, and I've said, and then in the Instagram content portion where you can write, I'll say like, this was what Dennis said this in the podcast, and then here's how to get the podcast. It's a little bit, I don't know that I'll just admit, like, I didn't really know before I started actually doing podcasts. I didn't really listen to any, so I didn't even go into my podcast app on my iPhone and do any of that. I know a lot of people, 57 million Americans are doing that. So the cool thing about Anchor, again, is that you can, it publishes you directly to the iTunes store. And so you can go and search Paul Hickey on your podcast app, and you'll be able to get that. But I'm saying that not for me, but for all of you to be able to just automatically have that out there for your brand. So think through, maybe it makes sense, maybe it doesn't. I guess one last thing too is just to try to be efficient with your time. Like this video can be, the audio version will go on the podcast, and then the video version will go on YouTube, and then a shorter version of the video where like these guys make their amazing points will go on Facebook and Instagram and that sort of thing. So just kind of using your time wisely, because that's the most valuable thing. You guys have so many other things to do than the stuff that we've just spent the last couple hours talking about. So again, I'm just trying to make it where if you can get your 5 pieces of content for the day off of something you're already doing, that's what I would recommend. And then just see how it works for you. Like no pressure, I think. Correct me if you think I'm off of any of this stuff, please, because it's just one. It's totally different for every person. So
no, it's like a living, breathing digital. That's why we do digital marketing. It's not just social media.
yeah.
I'm looking at your podcast right now.
Can I ask a question? I got 100 more.
5-star rating, please.
Sure.
Thanks.
What do you think the relevancy of blogging? Because it seems like if you haven't been in that space,
Yeah.
it's kind of done.
We did kind of talk about that. I think it's probably less. I do think that the blogging is less relevant probably for this room than maybe some other areas. Although I would argue that from a search engine optimization standpoint, it's always going to be the winner. So if you can create that authentic content, and it's a way to tell your story. I think the important thing is it's a way to tell your story. And so, and everyone's different. Like if we were to poll this room, some people like to read, some people like to listen, some people like to write, some people are horrible writers, some people like to be on camera, you know, some people hate the sound of their own voice. So I think that blogging will always be relevant in my mind. I think that in the context of like if you were to compare it to Instagram, I think we would all probably say lead with something more visual because of the room. But what do you think, Dana? You were kind of nodding your head at the search engine optimization.
We kind of have a pretty tight Instagram feed, but we are starting to refocus on our blog because we carry a lot of other brands, and these brands have very like-minded consumers, and they're very, they're same price point and everything. So what we are strategizing about is using that content for search engine optimization. When I Google some of these brands, you can't find them anywhere in the United States, and people are Googling these brands. So I'm going to start coming up.
Yep.
Actually, when I was entering the products in, I was Googling the websites that are in Europe, and I was copying and pasting the copy for the products that I'm uploading to our sites. By the 6th time I Googled the product of that brand, I came up as a result. And I was like, this is how it works.
That's
this is how people find it.
That's right. Yeah. So that's definitely an opportunity where we know there's going to be high search volume, but there's not a lot of people trying. There's not a lot of competition for it. So jumping and it's already natural for you. So just being able to take that and put out content in a blog is going to help you ultimately sell more products and help your partners sell their products as well. So
A lot of the fashion brands that we have and a lot of the individuals in the fashion industry do have blogs. And it does work beautifully doing exactly what you're talking about with cross-posting audiences and being able to talk about other channels and rank on SEO. You need to show up.
Is their blog on their website, or is their blog separate from their website and it's a separate blog?
You'd probably want to be a part of your website, so it's part of your top level domain. And then you can also use that blog. So the blog is what pulls the traffic in. But then once they're in, they're within one, the framework of your e-commerce site, but two, you can easily link them to products that you reference. You can have a nice little shoppable gallery in it. You can tie it to the shopping experience in a really organic way.
yeah, and so it's well said. And so if you're searching on Google, which again, that's the data is still overwhelmingly in favor of that's how people are getting their information. And obviously we know it's going more towards mobile, but so if you're searching on your phone for something and Dana's blog comes up about a particular product that you're searching for, a particular craftsman or someone who makes a particular type of material that's used in a product or whatever, and then it's on the top level domain, meaning the website, that's one click away from the store, or maybe there's featured products, like a featured product widget on the sidebar of the blog, and then they can, and it's buy this because we're talking about this here.
View the collection and you go back to there. But we got in trouble because we were on Shopify and our blog was on WordPress, and so it was actually splitting our traffic, and we weren't able to track where things were coming. So we cut that off, and we're starting it over on our domain. So I strongly suggest keeping it on your website.
Yeah. And Shopify does have a blog feature,
Much
so you
better
can
now,
do it
yeah.
there. Yeah, I mean, you could go the other way, but WooCommerce isn't nearly as good as Shopify. So.
So then on Facebook, if you were to take that same content and just post it in a Facebook post, maybe with a different image or something like that, or different headline, that's just a way of basically meeting your audience maybe more where they are too, and getting you different coverage than Google. So I think of your blog as getting you coverage on the organic side of Google, posting that same content, maybe repurposed a little bit on, I talked about Medium and Facebook and LinkedIn. Those are all just basically blogging platforms that would be a different way of meeting people where they are, and Instagram too. I mean, it's all kind of, again, ways to either hit different people or hit the same person with multiple messages. Yeah, it's just opportunity. Yeah. Any other thoughts or questions or?
How would you feel about pitching a guest post on somebody else's
Yeah.
blog instead? Because like I used to have a blog years ago, and I just realized I didn't have the time to keep up with the, you know,
Yep.
to like make big posts often enough. But if like I had enough time to do like one of them, like maybe just to pitch at somebody else. You know
I think that's brilliant because like you might have something to say, you just
Right.
don't want to say it or have the time to say it all the time. It might not be as important to you to say it all the time on your own blog, but you have something to say on someone else's blog. I think that's gonna be huge value to them and to you and bring people back. I love that.
It's kind of the equivalent of like influencers on Instagram. What you're getting through that is them putting you or your products in front of their audience. That's just in a blog form, them putting you in front of their audience, and they can frame it in a way that'll be really appealing to their audience because they know them well.
And from an SEO perspective, you're going to be getting a backlink and telling Google that your domain is of importance, and it helps raise your ranking as well.
Yep.
So
I think
it's
it
a good
increases
strategy.
credibility too. Like if you think about me blogging on my blog, you're kind of like, so what? You can do that whenever you want. But if you see me blog on like Industrious or eSpaces or something, you know, just a different place, then it kind of adds some credibility to you and to them, I think.
Yeah, and that's essentially what the backlink is. It's like SEO credibility versus the content credibility. It's saying to Google, like, this is a worthwhile place to send
Yeah.
people to.
Definitely. Great stuff. What else?
I heard recently that Facebook and or Google were changing their algorithms again. Do you know anything about it?
Probably. I think every minute of every day.
Always.
They're
They're just
definitely-
constantly
yeah.
changing it.
Yeah. I mean, so Google, for a while there, was publishing their kind of massive changes, and they were letting everybody know what that meant. I believe they've kind of stopped doing that to a certain extent. They do publish like when they make an algorithm update, they just don't always say exactly what it is, and I think that tells me that it's not major changes. I know that Facebook is constantly tweaking theirs as well. So what we covered in the previous session about relevancy to the user being the most valuable. Basically, both of those platforms, the way that they're going to continue to change their algorithm is to make it a better user experience for everyone. And so if you think about, like, if you're Google, and Google sees you searching for the same thing over and over again and clicking in a certain spot, they're going to continue to kind of go in that direction with the results that they show you. And so that's why you'll get a different ranking than maybe somebody else that you're even sitting right next to. For a particular keyword, you'll typically get a different set of rankings.
That's the other good thing with blogging, actually, is that if people are sharing and talking about your blog post, there's a thing called social affinity that Google tracks that helps raise your rankings as well. And so when people ask questions in Google, your blog post will come up as the answer, and there's where you can have all of the merchandise to, purchase.
Yeah, and so Facebook is going to show you kind of the same thing, where if you're not engaging with something, they're going to stop showing it to you, and then if you are, they're going to keep showing it to you. So they're constantly trying to tweak their algorithms to basically figure that out.
And they're also tweaking the algorithm so that it's a pay-to-play platform. Because Facebook is saturated, there's only so much ad space available, that they're also making the algorithm so that if you are a business on Facebook, you have to pay to play. There is no question about it. There's too little space and too many advertisers.
Yeah. It's still inexpensive for the amount of attention that you get. That'll probably change as more and more advertisers and users keep using the platforms. But like Google AdWords used to be 5 cents a click for a lot of keywords, and now it's $15, and upwards of like $40, $50 to get the top spot, to bid on the top spot. And so Facebook is still relatively Facebook, Instagram still relatively inexpensive, especially compared to Google AdWords, but it'll start to go to a higher price point. And things like, I don't know, Anchor or whatever's next, like whatever social media platform is next will be then that next sort of bargain for the amount of attention that you'll get for it. Cool. Thanks, guys.
We
Yeah.
may be going to this, but the keywords that you mentioned, is that something we're
Yeah.
going to cover, or how does that?
Oh yeah, so actually what we were talking about with blogging, a good way to break that down is so actually, do you mind telling us your example, like a little bit more about your example? We could use it.
Sure.
Real quick.
Sure. So we are Italian shoe brand in Nashville. Everything's made in Italy. We will also import Italian, European furniture. We also bring in a lot of other European clothing brands. And so what we're starting to do is just build content in our feed, our social media, as well as our blog, just talking about those different brands because they're the same consumer. Our logic being that the consumer's out there Googling for those brands, and then they find us, oh, it's held on there. Oh, who are these people? And they learn about us. So it's kind of a cross-pollination.
So a keyword might be the brand name of their partner that they're buying the material from in Italy, right? That would be one example of like if you're writing a blog that in my mind always goes to your blog should have one focused keyword, and that should be the one with the most search volume that's relevant to the content that you're creating. So if that's the brand name or if it's the type of material, there's Google has a tool, a keyword planner tool that you can put in an idea and it'll tell you kind of all the relevant key phrases related to it and how many people search on a monthly basis for it. And so I'm glad you brought that up because I definitely glossed over that. It's a way to say like if it could be just a slight variation of the same phrase that might get thousands more searches than the other variation, and so it's wise to say, okay, well, let's use that as a data point to make this variation of the keyword the focus. And what I mean by focus is like that appears 3 to 4 times within the body copy of maybe like a 800 to 1,000 word blog post, and maybe in like in the title, if you can fit it naturally in the title. Google, you'll get criticized, and Google will also, not that you care about being criticized, but Google will also penalize if it's like blatantly stuffing a keyword into these places. That's why I say like 3 to 4 times in that amount of words is pretty safe for having it be the focus keyword. I think it's not, it's okay to post a blog that doesn't have this strategy, first of all, because you can still bring in, achieve your business goals if you don't have this focus keyword, but it can open up the top of the funnel. It can kind of expand the top of the funnel more if you kind of add that type of strategy into the blog naturally.
I know this sounds like a focus. Are those keywords Googleable? Like, can you Google what are the keywords and then Google will tell you? Or
You can you can Google it, and it will show you. That data will be like how many searches, or that'll be how many search results there are for that phrase. The probably more relevant way to do it as the blog publisher would be to go, you just have to create, if you have a Gmail account, just go to adwords.google.com and just sign up for AdWords. And then once you do that, you'll have an AdWords account, and then you can go into your AdWords account and find the keyword planner. It'll be tools, keyword planner. And the keyword planner, you'll be able to type in what you think the keyword is that's gonna be like your top idea for a keyword, and then Google will tell you all of the data around which variations of that phrase get the most search volume. So it's pretty cool.
Couldn't you do that also, like, you could do it in a blog, but couldn't you also do it like an item description? Like if it was on your website, you could
Yeah.
keyword in that.
Absolutely.
That's a really good point. I'm glad you brought that up because like on your product description, each product should probably have its own focus keyword and to a certain extent have that written into the product description of the on the e-commerce, if it's an e-commerce site.
And even at the category level, so if you want to start ranking for Italian shoes, like you can put that on the category pages, find a place for some of that content so that starts ranking and not just a specific shoe. Yeah, or if you, like fine gold jewelry with, you know, something, some kind of phrase around what you like to rank for. You
In
can,
your category, and then again, maybe. put it
yeah,
in
you
the
want to
blog.
do different things. You're not going to want them to compete with each other, but if you want like a category ranking and then a specific product keyword.
Yeah, and I mean, it can get a little bit crazy amount of work depending on how many SKUs you have or how many products you have. Each one for best practices SEO on your site, each page and product page and everything should have its own different focus keyword with the content and the metadata of the page focused around that keyword. So Google will. It's debatable how much they'll dock you for it, but best practices are like not to duplicate the focus keyword on any 2 pages of your site. And so there's, in short, like Dana talked a little bit about WordPress and Shopify. Regardless of whatever platform your website is on, they all have their own version of the ability to say, like, this is my focus keyword, this is what I want. When I talk about metadata, it's really 3 fields that get filled out on the back end of that page. One is the search engine title, so it shows up in the web browser at the top of the web browser, but also in the source code, Google will read from left to right. So that's one thing, is like put your focus keyword on the left-hand side, and then maybe go brand terms after that, or whatever your brand message is. And then the second 2 are like a meta description, where you're just basically you're almost duplicating what the product description is, but it's shorter. It's more brief because it's what Google pulls that snippet to show on the search engine results page. So this is like getting pretty in depth here.
That's going to be helpful.
Listen to the podcast, read the blog. So it's real easy to do. It's just a matter, like, this is why I exist, because people, like a lot of people hate doing it. It's kind of a pain, but it's real easy to do, and just kind of strategically filling out all those fields will help in the long run with being able to bring people to your website.
And if you've already filled them out, can you go back and change them?
All
Yeah.
the time.
Doesn't matter.
Anytime.
Highly recommended to always kind of audit them if you can, and make them as relevant as possible to what like who you're trying to target at the time and what's relevant to your brand at the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.